The North Street developer St Edwards have now appealed the refusal of their original scheme and have also submitted a new planning proposal. They've told Guildford Borough Council that if their new proposal is accepted in the meantime, they'll discontinue their appeal, presumably before it gets too expensive for them to continue, and to a lesser extent it gets expensive for the council to defend it. It's clearly an attempt to try and force the issue and have the council back down, but the council has put aside a budget of 200k, which I'm told is a realistic figure for a robust defence of the refusal. I'm also advised that to complete the full appeal process might cost the developer anything up to around £1 million. So perhaps we might have expected a radically different proposal that addressed all, or at least most, of the vast number of issues that people raised as problems with the scheme. However, in fact, the new scheme is, in most aspects, very similar to the refused scheme. This plan shows only a relatively small number of changes, as you can see, and these section drawings show again that it's largely the same scheme. Instead of the tallest building being 13 stories, it's now down to 11, which is still roughly 18.5 metres higher than the single tallest building on the site currently, Dominion House. If we overlay Dominion House roughly on this plan, we can see that even the lowest part of the lowest building in the new proposal, shown here, is only around 3 metres shorter than the Dominion House building. These tower blocks are very, very tall, much taller than the surrounding buildings in North Street and the High Street, and not in keeping with the town at all. Since I first found out about the North Street scheme proposal in December last year, I've spoken to lots of architects, developers, building contractors, property agents. One of the biggest concerns is not just the height factor alone, but it's the sheer density of the proposed scheme. The old scheme was for 473 flats, and the new scheme is still proposed with 471. So despite having lost 2 stories from the highest block and putting additional stairwells in the blocks, there are only 2 fewer flats. So essentially they've made each flat, on average, even smaller. In many cases, only a tiny amount bigger than the absolute required minimum. And it's that extraordinary density of housing in such a small area, in tall buildings, in the middle of an historic town centre, which is the major problem that all the experienced people I spoke to highlighted. These flats are designed to cram around 1,500 people into a very small area, vertically stacking huge numbers of people and not providing the type of housing that people actually want in the borough. Just drawing in new people, many of whom will subsequently want 3-bedroomed homes in our villages and rural areas. Originally, this development was described as being high-quality, prestige apartments, but the vast majority of them would not. They'd be small flats crammed on top of each other, with no significant outside space or grass for kids to play, but quite a lot of dark alleyways for teenagers and young people to congregate in, potentially very intimidating. One of the very experienced architects I spoke to said that he felt that any chance of these being quality units that would attract relatively wealthy buyers who would provide much needed commercial support for the shops, restaurants, bars and other venues in the town had been completely designed out. He said that in his experience, and others I spoke to agreed, a lot of the development would most likely be sold off to investors who would then rent it out for government guaranteed housing benefit payments to people with tough lives on benefits, who we know from decades of experience do not gain from being crammed vertically into tower blocks. It's just an invitation for the sort of social problems that we know these sort of living environments invite and foster. The developer can show as many pictures with blue skies and greenery as they want, but it doesn't change the proposition. Tower blocks and concrete, people crammed in. The refused scheme had buses both entering and leaving from the Leapell Road end, creating a pedestrianised area with the trees and bushes shown here. But Surrey County Council objected, so the revised plan is to allow buses access via this roadway here. I guess that's better or worse depending on your individual view. Another traffic issue of both schemes would be access to the Leapell Road car park. At busy times, there's often a queue into the car park here, with traffic backed up down the road. But because the road is one way, that doesn't cause too much of a problem, as cars can drive past the car park queues. But the proposal is to make Leapell Road two-way traffic, so the queues would inevitably just cause more congestion coming into the town. And because the tower blocks will be built on top of the existing public car parking, presumably the Leapell Road car park would have to take up demand for parking. So the congestion would be increased, at least until people stop bothering to come to Guildford altogether. Residence parking consists of just 136 parking spaces for 471 flats, just one space for every 3.5 flats. But there are lots of bike storage areas everywhere, capacity for over 500 bikes. Now you might think that's a good thing, but it does limit the market for these flats and makes them much more suitable for commercial investors to rent to housing benefit recipients. As far as I can tell, this new scheme still provides little provision for affordable housing. There were just 20 units in the previous refused scheme, albeit only shared ownership rather than truly affordable housing in any real sense, and I haven't spotted any different proposition. But that's not a big surprise. The council policy is for there to be 40% affordable housing, but the developer is appealing the refused scheme, arguing with some difficulty that they can't afford to provide more in the scheme than the just over 4% that they are offering. So it would somewhat undermine their own appeal process if they now claim that they could provide more. But if their appeal fails on this factor, logically, so would this new planning proposal. So where do we go from here? Guildford's local plan designated a notional 400 units for this site, but the site for these units was the whole Friary Centre, the bus station and the proposed site. I gather it was envisaged that the bus station would be built on top of to achieve this number, but it was only later realised that it wouldn't be structurally possible as there are underground parking and loading bay areas beneath the bus station for the Friary Centre. The Liberal Democrats have revealed that if this second planning proposal also fails, the council will have the option to buy the remaining site. They already own the surface car parks from its current owner. So that's the challenge for the council. Do they simply roll over and capitulate to the developer and condemn Guildford to a tower blocks estate in its town centre? Or do they grasp the opportunity, refuse the scheme and then come up with something better for Guildford? The usual method is to come up with a series of simple potential outline schemes and put them out to public consultation to tease out the best solution.
Guildford deserves better. We urge you to refuse this overly tall application.
Guildford deserves better. Those were the words of John Harrison of the Guildford Residents Associations, who represent the residents groups across the borough, and I agree emphatically. As part of their appeal, the developer is now asking the council to accept their new design for the bus station as a revision to their original scheme without it going back through the planning process. So they're effectively accepting that their previous planning proposal was not a viable solution. If the council were to accept that, they would undermine their own defence of their planning refusal, and they would deny the proper process of the revised design going to public consultation and being considered by the council planning committee. It would be a betrayal of the basis on which they were elected. So it's up to the council to demonstrate that we collectively chose the right people to govern. The closure of House of Fraser is a significant blow for Guildford. The town is slowly declining, and there's no evidence that this scheme or the refused scheme would benefit the town commercially, despite there being a requirement in the local plan for a proper assessment of this. The power is in the council's hands. If they do genuinely want to deliver affordable housing, they can now do it if they want to. If they want to use this site to regenerate Guildford and make it a more attractive place to live, work and visit, they can. And it's up to us to judge them on their actions, on the choice they make as our representatives. Thanks for watching this video. Please do share it publicly as widely as you possibly can. It's the only way people understand what's going on and can make their voices heard. And right now, that's the most important thing we can do to help save our town and our borough. Share the information about what's going on with everyone. And please do visit the council's planning portal and submit your comments about the North Street scheme. You can do it online in a couple of minutes. The local election results in May should have communicated to local councillors how people feel about this scheme, but it always helps to reinforce that message and explain the factors. Thanks again.